This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Well, welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are here back live in the studio this Sunday. We are getting ready to head on the road for a little bit of while for a couple of trips, so you will miss us here in the studio. If you happen to be listening, you can hop over to Facebook and watch us live here in the studio today. We take questions live from the audience, so if any questions come up, even something we don't even cover that you're interested in hearing, you can hop on over onto Facebook and give us those questions, and we'll do the best to answer them. That's all I can promise. In fact, the last couple of shows where we've had some pretty good string of questions coming in, we've actually gone long. So we will actually stay here past the end of the broadcast to answer all the questions that you submit. So don't be shy. Feel free to hop on over. So today we have a guest in the studio, virtually in the studio. This is somebody that I've known for quite some time. They've been a long time listener to the show, and has been very supportive of, giving me the feedback, etc. on the show, but also as an innovator himself. So I want to welcome today's guest, which is John Osborne. John is has two key roles. One is as the chairman of the board for the Zigbee Alliance, but he's also the general manager for R&D over at Kroger's. So if you've got my book, Beyond the Obvious, you can go find the chapter. John's in it. He actually was gracious enough to do an interview for the book where we talked about the challenges of taking innovation processes and implementing them. But that is not the topic for today's show. We're not going to get into the Kroger thing's well documented. Pick up the book. You can read it in the book. But today, we're going to talk specifically around John's role as chairman of the Zigbee Alliance and what that really means from the standpoint of how do you innovate in those kinds of structures. So first off, hey, John, thanks for taking the time out of your Sunday and joining us today.
Great to be here, Phil, and hello to everyone out there on Facebook Live and on the radio.
So, John, I was trying to remember back when you and I met the first time. You reached out to me from the show, but it's got to be like, what, 2009, 2008, something like that?
Yeah, it's been quite a while.
Yeah.
You started your Killer Innovations podcast well before I found you, and we had a gentleman come in from FedEx who ended up starting the R&D team at Kroger, and he kind of introduced me to your podcasts, and the more and more I got into them, I had an hour drive to and from work every day. It filled up that drive time, and it was a good experience. So I reached out to you, noticed that you had some family in town, and we kind of put you together with some of the other Kroger folks. I think we did a meet and greet with the P&G folks as well. And ever since then, I think I've been kind of lurking in the corners and stalking you, as it were.
Yeah, in fact, it was I did a little workshop that was a combination of the Kroger team and the Procter & Gamble team. And then I had my grandmother lived in Norwood, a little town there actually inside of the city. So every time I was back, you and I would try to match up. But then one time you actually invited me to come out to kind of where you're working on the innovation work, the first stores you were doing. You were putting the Zigbee wireless technologies into. And I'll never forget this, right? I go do a lot of visits, right? So we're making these arrangements. I said, well, give me the address of where this innovation center is at. And he goes, oh, no, I can't do that. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, no. I'll meet you at this Kroger store at the Starbucks counter. Really? So we got this little 007 stealth thing going. So I ended up meeting John at the Starbucks counter at the Kroger store, and then got directed to where the innovation space was for Kroger Foods. I'll never forget that. That's one of those one of the more unique ways of meeting with innovation teams. So let's take a step back I'm guessing probably a lion's share of the listeners have no clue what Zigbee is. So give us the fundamental, basic definition of what is Zigbee.
Sure. So, Zigbee for me, that I try to explain to folks, is kind of that wireless communication between machines. Everyone understands, for the most part, what Wi-Fi is. It's the internet to you, and it's high bandwidth, it's movies, it's emails, it's FaceTime, whatever. And then there's always the Bluetooth, which I deem the body area network. It's keyboards and earpieces and things of that nature. And then there's Zigbee, and we've been around since 2002, connecting devices. It's a 250K pipe that allows you to build a mesh network, allows these sensors to talk to each other, and ultimately, I would say we were the original Internet of Things, as it were. And since we've kind of gone through the evolution of things, I would say we're probably the premier Internet of Things for devices. So that's kind of the quick and dirty high level.
And how long has Zigbee been out there?
Been around since 2002.
2002.
And we've had, I think today we're close to or around the 400 member mark. So we've got companies who are members of the organization. We're a nonprofit standards development organization. We've got companies from Europe, North America, and we have a lot of growth in Asia, China especially. So we're seeing consolidation of the industry. We're seeing consolidation of devices and stacks. So we've been kind of focusing on that with a new goal of how do we ultimately provide that connectivity for everything, instead of you as a consumer going to a store and looking for a home automation system, a security system, and trying to figure out, do they all work together? Do they plug and play together? And we heard that from the market many years ago, and we've been really working hard to make that interoperable message come true. So we've announced a lot of things here recently. You were at CES, you saw a few of the things as well, and we're still getting quite a bit of press on the rebranding of Zigbee, which is ... And we've had some demonstrations of the technology working with Thread, another organization that has kind of a IP stack for sensors, using our application layer. So we're really starting to see kind of the Internet of Things starting to come together. It is going to be interoperable, and hopefully this is what will kind of solve the problems for commercial and smart homes.
So in the case of like Zigbee Alliance, you've got 400 members. Is all of the technology development handled as is it community contributed? Is it open source? I mean, when you say your stacks, who's actually building those stacks for the members' use?
So it's definitely not open source. You have to be a member, and each company can contribute resources, whether it's mostly people, time, and money. And I call them frenemies. We all sit in a room together. We decide what needs to be done, what the market's looking for, and we'll go through months of iterations to create a specification. And then the teams can go back to their organizations. They can code against that specification. They take it to one of our 4 test houses for certification around the world, and they go out in the market and compete for the business that way. So they start out all with a common goal. They all want to solve a particular problem, and when they do get out into the market, that's where they will compete for our business as consumers.
So in this case, it's not open source, but it is code contributed. But you got to be a member of the community to take advantage of that stack that gets created by the community.
Yeah, if you're a member, you get a chance to come in and create.
Right.
If you're one of the, like an adopter level, you can pull the information down and take advantage of that a little bit earlier before the spec is released out into the public.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't download the specs if you're not a member, but you're not able to get the latest and greatest. You can't contribute. You can't really put your thoughts and ideas into what you think should be out there.
Yeah, and this is an interesting, right? Because now you're at Kroger now. I was at HP, but we were both very involved in different standards. You're involved in Zigbee still. At HP, I managed the industry standards organization. It reported to me, and we were 135 standard bodies that Hewlett Packard was part of. and innovating inside those groups. And now I'm a CEO at one of these kind of groups, right, in the form of Cable Labs. Innovating in a consensus environment where you've got these multiple members is completely different than innovating inside of a large organization, and completely different from innovating in a small organization. So when we come back, we're going to take this quick commercial break. I want to pick up that part of the conversation about innovating in these consensus-driven kinds of cultures. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to pick up our conversation with John Osborne, chairman of the Zigbee Alliance. So you don't want to go anywhere. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
BizTalk Radio.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are here in the studio. We are taking your questions live via Facebook Live, so hop on over and ask your questions. In this segment, I wanted to delve into the challenges of leading organizations that are these industry groups, these industry R&D activities. You know, John is the chair at the Zigbee Alliance, which has 400 members. I'm the CEO at an organization called Cable Labs, which is the R&D and innovation lab funded by the global cable industry. So think of us as kind of the Bell Labs for cable. And I have a little bit of a different challenge in my role because I'm funded by 57 cable operators from around the world. But in John's case, you know, trying to meet the needs and trying to get consensus and agreement on specifications and technologies and interoperability and all those kinds of things. So John, what are your thoughts on some of the challenges when you think about trying to drive innovation in consensus-driven organizations or associations like Zigbee?
It's a good question. It's a wonderful experience when you really get into it, because what we have is a leadership team today. We are spread all over the globe. You know, so you think about sitting in a boardroom and having these conversations, and really we do it, you know, via phone call, video links, things of that nature. And we have a very balanced organization, I would say. We've got silicon providers, we have product developers, we have end consumer devices, you know, whether it's a retailer like Kroger or Legrand or Schneider who's selling actual product to a commercial or smart home business. The opportunity to get everybody on the phone at the same time, you know, in China it's midnight, and you know, it can be middle of the afternoon in Europe, and it can be midday here in the U.S. of whichever side of the country you're on, and then trying to make sure that everyone understands what the goals are. We listen to everybody, and there, you know, there's cultural, there's language, there's time zones to deal with, and ultimately we will sit down for a couple of days each year at a retreat. We lay out what we think is important for us over the next several years, and we try to create a roadmap that we stick to, not be reactive, but have a clear path forward. And then we'll get together once a month, and we'll continue the conversation via web. And we get together 3 times a year at member meetings, and we actually will have our members come in, and we'll interact with them. We'll listen to what they're doing. You know, but they always have access to us anyway. So we boil it down like any big business. You know, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is it that's going to keep you alive? What is the market looking for? And how do we get there? And, you know, we have had some really good conversations and been able to pick what the priority is, and we move forward. And that's how we got to the consolidation efforts from the different silos within Zigbee. We had, and that's what I was
going to jump into, because you kind of led this effort to kind of bring and consolidate all the different activities, because Zigbee in the early days kind of had this, you know, the way they operated, they kind of had these different threads, And what you've done now is you've actually consolidated them down into the Zigbee 3.0 work, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we started, and this was kind of market driven, I guess, as it were. The commercial wanted commercial, a building specification, smart homes was a different one. Health was different. Smart energy was very different, and it had a lot more security around it. Remote controls was different. And, the market was changing. People said, I want this stuff to work together. We started planning this several years ago, and we were able to get the promoters, the board members and companies behind this. And we got the participants, the ones that actually write the specs and write the software and actually make the work happen, got behind it. And it was, 18 months from beginning to end to actually do that major consolidation. And then once we realized that it was working really well, and we had Thread come in and say, can we work together? We said, absolutely. We created ... which is now able to be taken over really any application. Think about pulling all of this together under Wi-Fi, under Bluetooth, under whatever other technology might be out there. And that, in my opinion, is what the market's demanding. And I think we've gone a long way in solving that problem, and we did it very quickly.
So talk a little bit, because I have a little bit of background on the Zigbee 3.0. You and I talked at CES, which is what kind of got us connected, and I wanted you to come on the show on this thing called ... Let me see if I explain it correctly, and then you can jump in and see if I got it wrong. ... is basically a platform that actually allows the device application layer guys to talk across the whole wide range. They only have to write to once, and they have the ability to interoperate across a number of other systems, Zigbee being one of those. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Spot on.
Okay. And that's really, when you look at just the sheer number of Internet of Things devices, whether it's your home security system or baby cameras, which is a big thing in my house right now with 5 grandkids. My wife wants to watch the grandkids, no matter where they are in the country. But digital locks, all the thermostats, all the things. And I think you're right. I think the marketplace is saying these kinds of innovations, these kinds of technologies, we need a radical simplification. Historically, it's just been too hard for consumers to go into a Home Depot or a Best Buy or whatever and figure out to bring that device home and how do I make it all work, in the home. So is .dot going to be the platform then that you think is going to solve that for the marketplace?
I think so, yes. Yeah, obviously, that's my opinion. There's other organizations out there that are trying to solve the problem. They've been out there for a while, and this may force some consolidation out there in the industry, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it will cause a little consternation, I think, as we go through this process. But Zigbee's been around for a long time. We're a very experienced, mature organization. We've got the backing of some very big global companies. And this is what the market wants, and we've listened, and we're going to make that happen.
Right. That's John was nice enough to host me at the Zigbee Alliance booth at CES this year, so I got to see some of the new kinds of devices that are pretty interesting from the standpoint of how they move and how they operate. There's one that was actually a light switch that didn't require electricity or battery, which I just thought was absolutely mind-blowing. We'll talk about that after. I'm going to leave that as a teaser. We'll pick that up after we get back from this quick commercial break. But I think there's so much work in this new buzzword of Internet of Things, and some of us in different groups or associations have been operating in this space for quite some time. It just now has a buzzworthy name to it now, and it's getting a lot of traction. But when we come back from this quick commercial break, we're going to dig into a little bit more about, we're not going to geek out on Zigbee per se, but really what's the impact in people's lives? What are the kinds of things this enables people to do, and then what the future holds for Zigbee and Internet of Things. So stay right there. We're going to be right back after this quick commercial break, and you're listening to Kill Innovations on the Biz Talk Radio Network.
Biz Talk Radio.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are continuing our conversation with John Osborne. John is the chairman of the board of the Zigbee Alliance, which is an industry association, industry standards body around the Zigbee technology, which is the wireless interface protocols stack that allow multiple Zigbee devices to talk to each other and do things that you probably don't even know are Zigbee out there, so given how long it's been around. So John, in this case, why don't you give us just talk us through a couple of the applications where Zigbee's been applied out there, and how that's being used. I know light bulbs is one area, but I know it's also applied to a lot of different areas.
All right, so the one that everyone seems to have in their house is the Philips Hue bulb. So if you go to look at the box, you'll see the red Z on it. And like you said, we have the full stack. It's the radio all the way up to the application layer. We have test houses, and we certify the product. And once it's certified, you can be assured that it will work together. We also have a big footprint in the smart energy space. So if you have a smart meter in your house, chances are it's a Zigbee product. If you have a set-top box, Comcast is probably one of the most well-known ones in the house. That is, carrying Zigbee in it. Your remote control, Zigbee. Lights all over the place. That's usually the anchor into the smart home or in the commercial building. And we've got a pretty big footprint in the commercial side, and commercial building side as well. And you'll see a lot more presence there, as we have had a lot of presence in the smart home. So we're there, and you're probably touching something Zigbee every day.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's interesting, right? People don't know. It's kind of like the Intel inside without the Intel logo. When you think about Zigbee, it's the same thing at Cable Labs. The stat I always like to quote is 50% of U.S. homes have at least one Cable Labs technology in the home, but nobody knows who the heck we are, which actually is not a bad thing. But where does it go from here? You announced at CES. You guys have been around for a long time. The whole IoT thing is heating up. Pull out your crystal ball. What does the future look like over the next couple of years? What do you think's interesting, exciting, things that people may be interested in?
Right. So for me, there's three things. The commercial building side of the industry is an area of focus. So we can do for the commercial building what we have done for the smart home. And this has always traditionally been a walled garden, proprietary systems. The vendors like to keep you kind of locked into their solution. So now we can give the companies more choice, and hopefully that will help kind of lower their cost and give them more flexibility in what they choose. Dot for us is something that we'll start picking up phones and calling folks and saying, can you want to be part of this process? Because ultimately, the more people we get on board, the bigger the island gets, the smaller the island for everyone else gets. And third for me is the kind of the energy harvesting, green power aspect. This is what you saw at CES, and we partnered or liaisoned with an organization over a year ago called InOcean, and they had the energy harvesting technology, and we have been working with them, some of their member companies joining Zigbee and working towards we call green power as a specification. And whether it's your home or a commercial building, your device can be battery-less. So you think about how you do renovations in the future, how you do new builds. You simply just take that device, stick it on the wall, commission it to your network, and you can control your lights. No more batteries, no more wires.
So John, explain energy harvesting. The fact that there's no wire going to it, there's no battery that you got to worry about, taking something apart and putting the battery in. Give a layman's description of what energy harvesting really is.
So it takes, there's a device in here that came from, InOcean. They created, invented it, which is pretty cool stuff. It takes the kinetic energy of you doing something. If you're flipping a switch on or off, it is just enough power to wake the system up, connect to the network, send the message, and go back to sleep. First time I saw it was at CES behind a closed door about 2 years ago. It was a French company brought in their dimmer switch for a light bulb. They brought in a device from Legrand over in France, and a Philips light bulb. 3 devices all talking together, and I just kept turning the dial left and right, and the light bulb kept going up and down. And I said, "This, there's something here for this. This is big." And you think about commercial buildings and hotels that have devices everywhere. There's one in Las Vegas. They deployed Zigbee first. They replaced a lot of the systems with the Zigbee infrastructure, and now they can go ultimately towards green power. But they told us they saved something like 50,000 batteries a year by kind of changing the technology out. And as we can get them into a green power batteryless solution, imagine what that will do for the industry, both home and commercial.
Well, and I get the battery thing, but what was really kind of the spark for me when I saw the demonstration at CES was the fact is one of the challenges if you want to put a device or something, in part of your house where you just don't have the wiring. You don't have the ability to reach to it, right? You want, all your light switches are there, but you wish your light switches were there. In this case, the demonstration that you showed, I could peel it off, stick it on the wall, right where I want it, and control the light bulb there. And I don't have to call that electrician in order to run wiring and tear up my ceilings and all that kind of stuff.
Yep, and I saw this really from a production perspective back in October in Hong Kong. We had three big companies sit on stage, and we all looked for the wiring to make sure there was nothing hidden like a magic trick.
Oh, well, there's the skeptic in you. Is there something behind here that we can't see?
Yeah, it was a great group. They're wonderful folks from all over the globe, which it makes it that much more fun to watch and participate in. And they even had temperature sensors that didn't have batteries, and that just blew me away. Just to see how this is progressing and how the team is pushing it forward, it makes me really proud to be part of the organization and ultimately what we can do with this in the next coming years.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it is mind blowing from that standpoint of now today if someone wants to come in and automate an office or automate a home, it's a big deal to come in and figure out where the wiring is and where you're going to install it and all the modifications into a home or facility. And I think it's been one of the things, other than things they can easily plug into a wall and go to connect to some kind of a network in the home. Even like I was joking before about my grandkids. My one set of grandkids at that time were living in Virginia, and my daughter wanted a baby camera just to watch the crib. Every stinking outlet in the nursery was in the wrong position, right? It just reinforces the fact that if IoT, home automation, smart devices, intelligent devices coming into the home, the ability to do that without disrupting the home, I think is going to take down one of the big barriers for adoptions of these kinds of technologies.
And I think it's going to be required as what I call the gray wave hits, and we all want to age in place. And it's from your grandkids to monitoring them to monitoring our parents, and you let them stay in their home, but you can sensorize things, and the system can then actually remind them, this is what you need to do. It can alert you even when you're nowhere near them. If something has or hasn't happened, mom or dad hasn't gotten out of bed today.
Yep.
You might want to give them a phone call. So we can change the world for the good from that perspective.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Because trying to get someone who's aging to get them to leave a house that they've been in for 10, 20, 30. In the case of my grandmother in Cincinnati, it was 60. She lived in the same house for 60 years. You weren't moving her from that house. So hey, John, I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your Sunday to come spend the time with us here at Killer Innovations. Really do appreciate it. We're going to have all the show notes along with all of John's contact information, over on the show notes. You just hop over to killerinnovations.com. We'll have all that information, and we'll link it out to both John personally, but also to the Zigbee Alliance, so that you can check it out. And if you're in the store and you're looking for home automation devices, you can see, what is it? It's a red Z, right? Isn't it what the branding logo is? So look in the box, find the red Z. That tells you that you're interoperable with all the other Zigbee devices that you may not even know you already have in your home. So stay right there. We're going to be right back. When we come back, we're going to talk about a quick update on what's going on here at Killer Innovations and also the contest, where we're at with that. And coming up, talking about season 13 of the show is we'll start here in March. So stay right there. We're going to be right back. And you're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
BizTalk Radio.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. Before we get started in this segment, I want to take just a moment and thank our sponsor today. Today's sponsor, the sponsor for our show, and it has been for the last couple months, is Zoom. Now, Zoom is a video collaboration technology. We've been using it for over a year, and let me tell you, it is stellar. The video quality, the audio quality, the collaboration, screen sharing is just second to none. And so, from that standpoint, as I've said, and you've heard me say it before in the past, Zoom is the first video collaboration technology that I've ever used that just flat out doesn't suck. I've tried them all. I've all just been, some of them are just horrendous from, way back. Zoom just crushes it. And it's actually quite funny. If you're in Silicon Valley and you're driving up 101, you actually see on their billboard right on 101 that says video that doesn't suck is actually their billboard promo sign. Eric Yoon and the team over there, I've known them for quite some time. And they've put together just a great technology. You really do need to try it out. So hop on over to killerinnovations.com/Zoom, get a free account. That free account will allow you to have up to 50 people on any one of your calls. So you can try it out, use it with up to 50 people, see how it works, and let me tell you, once you try it, you're going to switch. 100% of our team are now using it worldwide, and it's just transformed. I'm in it literally every day. So in this segment, what I want to talk a little bit about was what's going on here at Killer Innovations. March 5th will be the start of season 13. Can't believe it. We started March 5th in 2005. I was sitting in a Marriott resort in Arizona in the bathroom because it had the best echo sound for the microphone, and recorded the first show. And I thought I was going to do it just as a quick little experiment, basically as a way to address a question that I had with my early mentor, Bob Davis, who actually lives in Arizona now. And that is he put a lot of time into my career, and my question to him was, how do I pay it back? And he laughed because you can't pay it back. You got to pay it forward. You got to find a way to invest in others. Now, I do coaching and mentoring and those kinds of things for individuals. I do a lot of work with college students and interns, but the scope and my reach would be limited by whoever lived near me or could get onto my calendar and those kinds of things. So in this case, one of the things that I thought of was, why not try this new thing called podcasting and extend the reach it out to more people to see if people would respond to me kind of, sharing my frustrations and lessons learned and all those kinds of things from from being in the innovation game, leading teams that take ideas and transform those into real products, real services, real things that ultimately have an impact both on the customers' lives, but also on the organization that I'd be working for. And so it started off as this little experiment in a bathroom at a Marriott hotel has now blossomed into starting season 13 with now a nationally syndicated radio show. We are now on, we live stream. We're just wrapping up construction on a full multi-camera 4K broadcast studio here. We have a lot of new things that'll be coming in this year, not too far off, probably maybe another month or two. Some new content, new materials that we're going to be making it available. Yes, book number 2 is first draft is done, so we've got that going on also. So to celebrate the fact that we're getting ready to start season 13, is we came up with this crazy idea around a contest where you get to share the innovations that you're most excited about and most interested in. If you've been a long-time listener, you've been listening to me rant on things I like, things I don't like, my CES, summaries, those kinds of things. But here's your chance to share with me, but also the overall global listeners of this show, is to share what innovation you're most interested in. So all you need to do is go over and like us on whatever social media platform you're looking to share on, whether that's Instagram or Pinterest or Flipboard or Twitter or Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever it is you normally post. Go over there, like us, and then share the innovations that you're most interested in, most excited about. And then just mark it with a hashtag killer innovation. Don't put the S in, because it's too many variables for me to try to keep track of everybody who's posting. So share what it is, that innovation that you are absolutely just most excited about, the thing that just is rocking your world, things that you think are going to transform your lives, in the future. And so here's your chance. Just go over there, like it, so that way I can see it in my timelines on whatever social media platform it is, and then use the hashtag killer innovation. And what we're going to do is on the March 5th show, we are going to announce a winner. That winner gets to take over the show. So you can come here to Colorado, you can sit here at the table with me, you can drive the show. You can ask me questions, we can have a conversation, whatever it is you want to talk about. Shouldn't say anything. It's got to be within the context of innovation, creativity, and design. That's the theme of the show. It's been the theme of the show since the beginning. But here's your chance. If you've got a startup, you've got that really little idea bouncing around in your head, you want to do a launch where you want to announce something on the show, whatever it is you want to do, here's your chance to have the ability to be in front of a national audience, both in front of the listeners of 35 radio stations, but also the global listener base for the podcast. And the podcast has been on a real tear here lately. We've doubled the total downloads in the last 6 months. So 6 months ago to now, we've doubled the number of listeners. So we greatly appreciate this. The show would not exist without you, the listeners. So that's really the big activity we got going on between now and March, but stay tuned. We've got some new interesting content coming up here in the next couple of months, but right now we're all focused on season 13. So stay right. Well, we're going to actually wrap up the show at this point. Now I'm all confused. We're going to wrap this up. I'm going to thank you for taking the time listening to this Sunday. Don't let the antibodies get you down. You're listening to Kill Innovations, and we'll talk to you next Sunday.
The opinions you hear on Biz Talk Radio are those of the hosts, callers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect those of this station, Biz Talk Radio, its management, or advertisers. The information on Biz Talk Radio does not constitute a recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or service. If you have any questions about Biz Talk Radio, contact us at 817-274-1609 or at biztalkradio.com. Biz Talk Radio.